Luke chapter 22, verse 42. Luke 22:42. This is Jesus' prayer, as you probably know. One of the most intense and fervent prayers you could read in the scripture, prayed by none other than Jesus himself. Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Now I'm going to pray again. I'm going to read again. Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. I remember, when I heard this verse for the first time, I was kind of 8 years old. Obviously, I didn't know much about the Bible, or I was one of those nominal Christians. But I was in a hospital run by Catholic nuns. And I still remember hearing this verse. I was a kid, I had some kind of viral fever. I was admitted to the hospital, so nuns reading this, as part of their Kandanad. I don't know if you remember Kandanad. There was a hospital called Avila Hospital, which was a Catholic hospital, not anymore now. But anyway, so I heard this for the first time, and I remember thinking, that didn't really make any sense to me. Jesus saying, if you're willing, remove this cup from me. Not that I was an intellectual or, at that 8 years old, and I was not, I was a theologian, but from the little bit of Sunday school I did in my Syrian church background, I knew Jesus came for the very purpose, right, for dying for other people. Jesus didn't have to come for anything, so he came just to drink this cup, right? And he was the Son of God. And he knew who he was, and he knew what he was going to do. But still, at the very last moment in his life, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Like Jesus was praying, if you're willing, can you take this cup away from me? The ultimate manifestation and expression of the humanity of Jesus, right? When we think about Jesus, we always think like this big supernatural being, because that's the way we are trained to think, because Jesus is our God. But at the same time, as you all know, he was the Son of God, and he was also the Son of Man. This profound sense of humanity in him, and the weakness in him, and the brokenness in him is so real. And he had that audacity to pray that prayer. And whoever wrote the gospel had the audacity to write that prayer and print it. If I was one of Luke or Mark or somebody, I heard that prayer, I would say, maybe I'll just keep it under the rugs. I don't want to put it in the Bible. What will somebody think after 2,000 years from now? Some kind of Mathew, John will think, yeah, that was not very nice. That was sort of a weakness, right? So I would have, if I was the writer of the Bible, I would have put it under the rugs, and I would have kept it, tried to keep it a secret. But the Bible was very clear and very open, and that's what I really like about the Bible too. There's nothing. It's not some exaggerated stories and cooking up to create some kind of mythology. It's real thing about real God, the real humanity of the real God, right? And that the expression of that weakness and the prayer of Jesus saying that if you are willing, please take this cup away from me. The very cup he came to drink. And, sometimes it's a good lesson for us, sometimes we pretend that we are stronger than Jesus. Because this kind of prayer, very rarely we pray. Like we always, at least we put on a face in front of people. Oh, brother, this is all God's plan. Let's, don't worry about it. Don't get confused. Let's struggle. Let's have faith. Faith is a big commodity being sold through television, Christian televisions today. Like we need to have more faith. We need to be stronger. And sometimes we pretend that we are stronger than Jesus sometimes. And we don't want to admit that there's that humanity in us. There is that brokenness in us. To say that, Lord, I'm being very candid here. Sometimes I pray, Lord, I like to be a normal person sometimes. Not that I'm not super normal. But sometimes I think you know what, Yeah, I know I have a calling to do. I know I heard this calling very clearly, but sometimes I like to lead a normal life. I like to have a house in Rancho Cucamonga like most of the people do, or Fontana, wherever. I like to have 2 cars. I mean, I don't want to wait for my wife to come so that I can go somewhere else. And you know, it is so real. And I'm sure you have all of your struggle too, right? Like I'm just talking about myself here. And it is, and we don't have to pretend that it is not there. Now, this is, you know, I have 3 Sundays, so I thought I'll talk a little bit about what prayer means to me and what prayer. How do we sort of redefine prayer in a way to make sense of some of these questions, to be being real. So from my own perspective, right? So this is the prayer Jesus prayed. Let this, you know, please take this cup away from me. And we wonder, was this prayer really answered? Like he wanted this cup to go away. But did it really go away? It didn't, right? Like he ended up drinking it anyway. It's the same Jesus who said, ask, you will, it will be given, and seek, you will find, and knock, it will be open to you, right? Like, why don't we read that verse? That will be nice, because I think we need to center our discussion around. I think the scripture is Luke chapter 11, verses 9 and 10. Luke chapter 11, verses 9 and 10. Yes. So I say to you, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. And the next verse, for everyone, that's a bold claim. It's a bold claim. For everyone who asks, receives, and he who seeks, finds, and to him who knocks, it will be opened. Jesus, he said that, as nobody else said that. Jesus said, that was a pretty blanketed claim to say that everyone, it kind of gives us the impression that anything we ask at any time by anyone will receive it. It's such a kind of a vacuum cleaner salesman kind of a promise, right? Like, you know, and sometime, and we wonder, did Jesus try to kind of manipulate us into some of this, or does it almost always happens? At least in Jesus' case, it didn't really happen. Well, he wanted the cup to go away. The cup didn't go anywhere. The cup didn't go anywhere. It's like a bald man selling, you know, the what do you call it? The medicine for baldness or something like that, right? There's a funny story about that. But anyway, but what does that really mean? Was that prayer really answered? And, you know, so, I mean, when this happens to us, and being a pastor, this, believe me, this is probably the most difficult thing a pastor has to deal with. You talk about homosexuality, you talk about politics, yeah, that's all important. But within a church, this is probably, as a pastor, when you pray for other people, even if you don't pray, but within the congregation, when some of you go through some difficult situation, it becomes very personal for a pastor. If you're a real pastor, that's the way it happens. So, you know, I pray for other people much more than I do for myself, because it kind of personally affects me. And this particular person is praying for a job, and then you put it in Luke chapter 11, 9, 10, you said it's going to happen, but it's not really happening to my brother, and I'm a pastor, I'm responsible, I have to answer. He's going to come and ask me, so this is what is it in the Bible, why is it not happening to me? And as a pastor, now you put me in a difficult situation, I have to answer this. So this is kind of a complicated topic for pastors in particular, and you all in that sense are pastors. You intercede for other people, and in a church, so-called unanswered prayers is a big topic. We really try to grapple our mind around. So when it happens, very often we say, well, I think there is this verse. I think it is not Luke, James. Yeah, James 4:3. James 4:3. Can I get James 4? Yeah. This verse really helps pastors a lot. You ask God, you ask and do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives. so that you may spend it on your pleasure. Yeah, brother, that prayer you're praying for, that job, yeah, it's a good thing, but there is a wrong motive, because you need, so kind of helps, it gives us some leeway to work around it. And we always put the blame, because we want to, of course, this is same for you too, because you don't want to blame God. You don't want to accuse Jesus for saying something he didn't plan to give us anyway. So we always try to safeguard God, right? We always want to save God. We want to take blame on ourselves or put it on somebody else, not to God. So we always attribute that to the thing we asked. Yeah, you shouldn't be asking for that kind of stuff, and because you wanted to spend it on your pleasure, right? And sometimes we attribute it on people too. There's another verse, and I don't want to all these verses, where it says the prayer of a sinner, God doesn't listen to the prayer of a sinful person, or something like that. So then, quite often in television, Christian television in particular, they say, you have to check your life. You are going through some suffering. You are going through some sickness because there is some kind of sin in your life. You have done something wrong. That's why you are sick. And that's why you lost your job. And that's why you are going through this tough situation. And so in that again, putting the guilt or transferring the guilt and putting the blame on the person who prays or the subject he or she is praying for, right? And or we always, because these are some of the ways we try to make sense of this verse. That's what I'm being very honest here, right? So sometimes we say, I've heard this, especially back in India, I've heard many sermons on prayer. They always say, sometime when you pray to God, the answer will be yes. And sometime you pray to God, the answer will be no. And sometime the answer will be maybe, or wait. And I hear that sounds good, but it also sounds ridiculous. Because if I just pray to this microphone that I want something, right? I'm just praying to this microphone. I want something. Sometime it can happen out of coincidence, right? I want another car. I just pray, and I just pray to the microphone, but hey, I might have a windfall, and I might have some money, and I might end up buying another car. And sometimes the answer is no. Most probably it is going to be no. Microphone will not answer me. Sometimes wait. Yeah, waited for a couple more months and, got enough money to put down payment and put another lease. So, you know what I'm trying to say? That's not really an answer in itself, even though that is kind of an answer. I'm not questioning, and I'm not trying to make you skeptics or anything. But this is this is a very interesting issue Jesus had to kind of grapple with, and this is actually Jesus who gave this promise himself is going through, kind of in a breaking point, I would say, right? Like he's kind of in a breaking point, like his humanity is coming out completely, almost, and he says, "Oh, take this cup away from me." Now the question is, did this prayer get answered? Was this prayer answered? What do you think? When Emmanuel was saying, he asked us to recollect our memories with celebrities, and, so I was thinking about, I met a couple of celebrities too, like some famous people. Not the industrial minister, man. Not the industrial, not that big celebrities, but some Christian celebrities. Just hanging out in this field. And one of them, and I'm sure I've told you this, Ravi Zachariah, right? You remember Ravi Zachariah? Right? The other Indian guy, So I still. I don't know if I mentioned the story, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was doing my seminary project back in Toronto. The last year, we had to submit a thesis. And I hate writing thesis. So I said, as a change, I'm going to do a video essay. So I'm going to produce a documentary instead of writing a 200-page thesis. So they said yes. So I wanted to interview some different professors and all that about the significance of theological education in the society. Like, is there any point in doing seminary education after all? After going to seminary for 3 years, I was wondering, is there any point to any of this? So I thought I'm going to get perspectives from different people about this issue, and I'm going to put it together as a video essay. So I I thought, well, Ravi Sakraya is, as you know, he's from Toronto. I don't know how many of you know this. He's an Indo-Canadian. So he was coming to Toronto. I wrote to his office in Atlanta, can I get 10 minutes interview with him? And he was kind enough to give me 10 minutes. And he ended up, and he was in a hotel in Toronto. He said, Mathew, come in. And so I went in, and we ended up talking for a couple hours because his wife was away for shopping. And he said, you have time till my wife comes. And she didn't show up. So after a while, we got bored. So then he laid his hands on me and prayed and all that kind of stuff. It's a down-to-earth person. The point is not that concerning prayer. So I had this question to Ravi Sakraya about the significance of theological education in, 20th century. Some kind of very stylish dissertation kind of topic. But Ravi Sakraya, as you know, is a very intellectual person. And he always thinks about, it doesn't matter which question you ask him. It all comes through a same trajectory. Because he uses these words which, even the Americans have to listen to it with the dictionary. I don't know how people memorize and talk this English so well. And so it doesn't matter which question he asks. He goes to this, the issue of humanism and atheism in the current society and how we have to attack that. But that's not exactly my question, but that's his answer anyway. So I try to put the question in a different way, but he still goes back to this Richard Dawkins doing this and Sam Harris doing this and how as Christians but my question is no. But he said, I'm coming to that. Then he comes to with his answer. So in the end, I ended up not really using much of his interview in my video essay. So, but if I go to my professor and say, well, I asked a lot of questions to Ravi Sakraya, but he didn't answer me. That's not right? He answered my questions, but it is his answer to my question. So question is mine, it's my question, but answer is Ravi Sakraya's answer. He gave his answer, and I have my question. Just because I didn't get the answer I expected, that's the way dissertations work, if you don't know. We always come up with a thesis first, and we want to get the thesis right, right or wrong. It should be around that we kind of polish. It's a trick in the research methodology. Anyway, I'm not going to do that here. So, but I cannot say that Ravi Sakraya didn't answer my question because he didn't answer what I wanted to hear. He answered the question. It was his answer, not my answer. The question was mine, but the answer was his. Now, back, when I went to India this time, I watched a television show, and there's this guy. Some of you might know. He picks random people from the audience, and then he asks them to imagine a person in their mind. Remember, a person in their mind, and he will ask only 5 questions to them. Right? Some of you have seen it, I guess. He will, within 5 questions, he will ask 5 questions, all are yes or no or something like that. And within that 5 questions, he's going to find out what is in this person's mind. That's amazing. Because he can pick pretty much anybody. He can pick a Bible character. He can pick a politician. He can pick a celebrity, a movie star from pretty much anywhere in the world. This guy is so intelligent. The way he phrases his question, it's fun to watch. The way he phrases the question to find what is in this other person's mind, right? It's like a mind game. And you're trying to read the mind because the answer is already available. It's fixed. So it's for the questioner to play this mind game to find the mind of the person who already has the answer. Because the answer cannot be changed. Because it's his answer. You're intelligent enough to get what I'm trying to say here, right? So the answer, the person who came up from the audience, he already has the answer. It cannot be changed. It is sovereign, if I use Annie's terminology. It is fixed. It is finalized. That you can do nothing about it. But it is for the questioner to pose his questions and try to walk around this person to see what is in the other person's mind. And when I was watching that is kind of what prayer is. That is kind of what prayer is. Because we are ultimately seeking the will of God, right? 'Cause that's fixed. Because God has a will, God has a plan for us. So that's there. So then in prayer, we are kind of trying to find the mind of God. Otherwise, there is no point in because you just think, just imagine. If God already knows what is in your mind, of course, He is God, right? If God already knows your needs, don't you think that God already knows that you need a job or you need a car or you need whatever, right? If God already knows what you need, and if He cares enough to give you that, of course He cares enough to give you what you need, right? Then why should we pray? Is it God is having fun? If God already knows what Matthew John wants, and He cares for Matthew enough to give that need, then why should He ask Matthew to pray? I mean, just to watch me, having this turmoil, going through this turmoil. Logically, does that make sense? My mom back home in India packed my lunch every day when I went to school, and that's a routine. I get up and I go to school, and my mom comes with this lunch box, and I go and have my lunch. There's no point in every day morning I say, Mom, can you pack my lunch today? And the next day again, Mom, can you pack my lunch today? No, that doesn't make any sense. Because my mom knows that I need lunch. And my mom cares enough that she packs lunch for me every day. So prayer becomes a pointless exercise if that's the way because very often that's the paradigm in which we think about prayer. But if you think about prayer as this TV show, where God has the answer, and God wants you to find His mind by posing the right questions and by asking Him, because the Christian life is all about building relationship, right? Don't you think? That's ultimate. We talk about, we have a personal relationship with Christ. People, it is almost become cliche. What does that really mean? What is a personal relationship means? When I asked Joanne, maybe I've told this to you, what does she, we have been married for 17 years. Every year, I want to buy something for her birthday. And then comes the Mother's Day, then comes Valentine's Day. It's all kind of coming together, right? It's kind of panic. I'm in a panic mode. I get 3-4 and wedding anniversary, like 3-4 things. So I just want to know, man, what does she want? Like 3-4 things that in 3 months span, everything comes together. So I'll ask her, what do you want? And she said, I'm not going to tell you. You know me. I mean, is she being mean? No. She wants me to know her, because that's the way our relationship grows. It was very difficult the first 5 years. Then now I kind of know. I still mess up sometimes. But I kind of know how she thinks and what she wants because she doesn't tell me. And because she doesn't tell me, it is just like that. I'm like the host of that TV show. And she stands with her answer. She knows exactly what she wants. She won't tell me. But then I walk around her trying to figure out, what exactly Joanne wants. I remember her saying this to Hannah. I remember her saying this at the church. And I remember her. So I start thinking about her more. I start thinking about her dreams. And I start thinking about her desire. I'm thinking about who she is. And so it's not about the gift anyway. She doesn't care about the gifts. Like she doesn't care about the gifts. But that gift-giving process has to be a process in which our relationship is growing. That's what she is more concerned about. She doesn't care about gift, actually. Thankfully, she hates expensive gifts, but she is very particular that it will be an occasion for our relationship to grow. So it is not that the guest in the show is being mean by hiding his answer, but he is giving an opportunity for the host to get to know his mind, because that's the only way for the relationship to grow. So God is saying that, Matthew, I know exactly what you want. I have already planned this for you from the foundation of the world. Not even before you were born. It's just, far, far away, right? But the point is, I want you to know it. I want you to read my mind. I want you, to form the mind of Christ in you. Remember some of the Bible verses? He wants us to have the attitude of Christ. He wants us to have the mind of Christ. How do we get the mind of Christ? You think you can just fast and pray and one fine morning the mind of Christ will come to you? No, it's a process. After 17 years, I'm trying to figure out the mind of my wife. So you are trying to find the mind of God, and it has to be through a process. Then prayer makes sense. Because prayer is not about questions and answers. Prayer is not about giving and taking. Well, it is all about that. But eventually, it is a spiritual exercise in which we position ourselves in front of God to know His mind, to go further in our relationship. That's what prayer is about. It's not about job. It's not about, it's all important. I'm not saying that's not that. We have to have a paradigm shift in the way we understand prayer. We have to redefine prayer in that perspective. So I'm gonna quickly show some pictures to make this is of it. So this is a pictorial way I think I could show it. It's all geometry today. So like that top will, the will of God, that the blue circle, the big circle is the will of God. Okay, so this is the prayer. This is how the prayer starts. I'm going to show you 3 pictures. When the prayer starts, there is a will of God. So you guys are all Christians. So you want what God wants for you, right? Right? So you have the will of God, and you are going in prayer, and the yellow circle is our prayer request, or it's the will of Mathew John. I have a will too, Lord. I want a house in Rancho Cucamonga, Beverly Hills, wherever it is, right? So I have this little small circle too, but I'm ready, but I'm going for prayer, and I'm going to. So these 2 circles kind of collide in prayer. So that's what's happening. So in the next, if you go to the next, so that's a stage 1. So stage 2, what happens is, so in prayer, I'm lifting myself up into the will of God. So that's what is happening in prayer. So that's why I said prayer is a spiritual exercise. I'm trying to find the mind of God. I'm trying to find the will of God for me so that I lift myself up. And that's why prayer is a beautiful thing. That's why, Paul said you have to pray without ceasing, because he says that you have to lift yourself up to the will of God so that you will. And so, but again, because Mathew John being Mathew John, I'm not a perfect person. So I still have my will a little bit, right? My yellow circle is still there. My small circle won't go and fully merge in the big circle because I still have my own egos and my own frustrations, and I still need certain things, even if it is not the will of God. I like to have certain stuff in my life. I think that's the same for many of you, but I'm not as pious as many of you. But I still have certain. So I'm not willing enough to go full into the full circle. Sometimes we try to. Very often, the way we are taught in prayer is to somehow pull that big circle down to match our circle. That's what we often think of prayer, right? So we go to the small circle with the yellow circle, and the blue circle is there. Prayer is, bring it down. God, come. This is what we want. I'm going to beg, and I'm going to plead. I'm going to bring it down. So we want that upper circle to come to our level. That's the way, I don't know about you, that's the way I am taught in my background to pray. Somehow plead and beg to God so that, God will somehow, succumb or agree with whatever is in our mind. And that's the kind of prayer. I did a sermon on Hezekiah. I'm not going to repeat it. You remember Hezekiah, and some of you remember that sermon, some of you don't. But that's what Hezekiah, right? That's his name. Yeah, the king. Yeah. Yeah, that's what he did. God said, time for you to die, Hezekiah. Who will get that kind of warning, right? Perfect. You have time to clear up everything and, settle everything and sign all your will and give it to your children or church or whatever. And then Hezekiah said, well, that's a great blue circle, but I want it to come down. So he turned against the wall and he did this big prayer marathon. And finally, he brought it down. It happens too. But it happened at his peril. And that was the essence of all that sermon. And you know what happened. I think he got 15 years of extended life. Within 15 years, he got Manasseh, his son, and that Manasseh became the devil, not only for, and he changed the course of entire history. Even today, we suffer the consequence of what Manasseh did to Israel, the sins of Manasseh. So the point is, don't think it is an opportunity. Prayer is an opportunity to bring that big circle up from down, because it might happen. And it happened, it's not going to be good for you or for God, for anybody else. So be very careful in that prayer. The small circle should go always up. And that's the experience we need to have. So the third circle, the third. So this is kind of what is happening in Jesus' prayer, isn't it? Right? So Jesus, knowing fully well that he came to drink the cup, and he is praying in his brokenness, in his perfect humanity. But the funny thing is that when I asked you, was Jesus' prayer answered? The prayer is answered in the very sentence, next sentence. So this is what he prayed. Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Semicolon in my Bible. Semicolon. That semicolon is a big semicolon, because something happened at that semicolon. The course of entire things changed. The next thing comes. Yet not my will, but yours be done. That's exactly where the whole circle came from, went up and submerged in the will of God. So in the first section of that prayer was the prayer, and the second section of that prayer was the answer. Because the prayer was not about getting what Jesus wanted, but prayer is about the spiritual exercise being aligning or being tuned or being in sync with the will of God. So the prayer of Jesus, was it answered? It was because it was, but not in a spectacular way though. We always are trained to think in spectacular way. I still remember the first time I got so fascination for reading the Bible was watching the movie Ten Commandments, right? Ten Commandments you watch, and the way the Red Sea is parting. You remember? Moses just goes there and shows his like little tiny stick, and the whole sea parts. And so I was like, wow, yeah, Moses had a need, and God came down, and God answered his prayer. But in Jesus' case, it was a different kind of answer. In Moses' case, the situations changed according to his needs, because that was also part of the will of God. But in Jesus' case, he was changed according to situations. There are two ways of the prayer being answered. Prayer not always changes situations according to our needs. Sometimes it changes us according to the situations. And I had this funny picture back, back in my house in India. There was this tiny poster. It's about a mouse trying to lift a weight. Like this heavy, like a Mickey Mouse or something, trying to lift this big heavyweight stuff. And then the caption under says something like this: God, if it cannot be any lighter, please make me stronger. This little mouse is He's praying because obviously he cannot weigh. So he's praying to God, can you make this weight a little light so that I can lift it? But then he said, well, if you cannot make it light, help me to be stronger. So that's two different ways of prayer being answered. Sometimes God will make the weight light so that you can carry it, even though you're a mice. Sometimes God will make you a lion so that you can carry, it doesn't matter which weight it is. So the answer is not happening on the weight itself. The answer is happening within you. In Moses' case, the answer didn't happen within Moses. It happened around Moses. The Red Sea parted. In Jesus' case, the answer happened within Jesus, because Jesus became a different entity at that time. His humanity kind of parted and the divinity kind of came through. So that's where that small circle went up and submerged in the will of God. We are going to spend some time in prayer. And I want you to know that, we are all, in some sense, going through the situation. We are all, there is nothing to be ashamed about it. Jesus wasn't. And we all have our own period of brokenness. We all have our own melting point, right? There are different kind of elements, like remember chemistry? Different elements have different metals have different melting points. And if you have ever seen a blacksmith working on metal, a blacksmith know exactly at what temperature each metal has to be treated. Because you'll put iron in that blacksmith thing, whatever you call it, and then he applies heat. And then it kind of becomes red hot, then he starts slowly molding it. So that's something like in academic language, we call it a liminal stage. Liminal stage. We can be, at that time, we can be shaped into anything. Even though we are iron, when we are red hot, when we reach the melting point, a good blacksmith knows the exact melting point. If it is too much, it will break. It will melt away and it will be completely destroyed. A good blacksmith knows exactly at what temperature, how long it can go, and that's when the shaping happens. That liminal stage, maybe from one job to the other, maybe in our marriage, or maybe in our house thing, maybe in our work thing, maybe at family, and we are all going through some sort of that breaking point, and we wonder why. We are asking God. He said we will ask, we will receive, and seek, we will find, and knock, we will open. Nothing is happening. I promise you, God's answer is there. It is His answer, and your question, and the answer might be revealed in you, within you. And because this is the stage, the ultimate teachable moment in which God can work in our own life. Because this little circle is going to go up and submerge into the will of God. That's when the miracle is going to happen. That's when every prayer we ask will be answered, because we are in the will of God. So whatever we are going to ask will be the will of God. So that has to be answered just like that, because it's God's plan. So in that spiritual exercise, we will eventually build our relationship to God in such a way that whatever we ask will be the will of God, and whatever we ask will be done, because that's the kind of things we are going to ask, because we are in sync with God.